Hi, this is Chris Demiris, co-founder of Luma Touch.
This is Neill Barham, founder and CEO of Filmic Incorporated, makers of Filmic Pro, and you're listening to the Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions, and this is the Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production and filmmaking industries. The next evolution in filmmaking is here, and it's on your phone. Listen as our guests Neill Barham and Chris Demiris share tips to prepare you for the mobile filmmaking revolution. The Go Creative Show is supported by Rule Boston Camera, Buy Rent Create at Rule.com, NewsShooter.com, essential news for real-world shooters, Hedge.video, the fastest way to back up media, Shutterstock.com, and PremiumBeat.com. Premium, royalty-free music and sound. Tangerine, Dancers of New York, Made in Paris, Snowstream Iron, Unseen. What do all of these films have in common? They are all shot on iPhone. iPhone! The world is changing, people. The way we make films is changing. We covered Tangerine a couple of years back. But Unseen, that was shot by Steven Soderbergh. And he's been quoted in saying that he only wants to shoot on iPhones moving forward. So there is something going on in this industry, and we need to be ready. And that's what this episode is all about. We've got two guests to talk about this with me. We've got Neill Barham from Filmic Pro. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you guys already have that app on your phone and use it. And then Chris Demiris, co-founder of Luma Touch, and he's got a mobile editing app called Luma Fusion that we're going to talk all about. So we're going to talk about the apps, what their features are, and how they work together, what the workflow is like. And that's all coming up in just a couple of minutes. But before we get there, I want to talk about Rule Boston Camera. Rule is the place to go to purchase and rent all of your production equipment. I am there all the time. I'm always buying stuff from them. I'm always renting stuff from them. And it's, well, for one, they have a huge inventory, so that's super important. But also, it's really the service and the support over there. Because here's the thing. I'm renting because I'm not owning. That's the reason that I'm renting. And because I don't own, I may not know a piece of equipment in and out like I do the stuff that I do own. And with that, you want to make sure that you have some support so that when you're on set, when you're taking the camera home, when you're trying to fiddle with it and figure out how to use it the next day, you want to make sure that you have the support behind you to ask questions and get answers. And that's what you're going to get at Rule Boston Camera. I've never left there with equipment feeling unsure about what I'm going home with. Never. And that's because they go over everything with you, and you know that they have your back. Production is mission critical. You only get one chance to do a lot of this. I mean, nobody wants to do a reshoot day because it's a pain, and everyone's aggravated, and you've wasted money. And part of the success of a shoot day is knowing how to use your equipment and knowing how to use it well. So besides having a huge inventory, they also give you this great support, and those two things together are the reason that I keep going back and keep talking about them week to week because I love these guys. So there it is, huge selection of lenses, lighting, audio, camera, grip gear, communications, camera dynamics. Everything you need is there. You can buy it, you can rent it, but most importantly, you have the support to make sure you can use it effectively and correctly. And that's why we love those guys. So check them out, rule.com, RULE.com. All right, it's time to move on to our spotlight. So much to talk about in this mobile filmmaking phenomenon that we are living through right now. So I'd like to welcome Neill Barham and Chris Demiris. So I'm here with Neill Barham, CEO of Filmic Pro, and Chris Demiris, co-founder of Luma Touch. And so excited to have you guys on the show today because there is a lot to talk about in our future of filmmaking. There certainly is. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Here.
Basically, what's going on, at least it seems, is there is a real push towards actual professional video production being done with phones. Like, I can't believe it. When Tangerine came out, we covered it. You know, we had the filmmakers on the show to talk about it. Fast forward a few years, there's a whole bunch more movies, and Steven Soderbergh is saying all he's ever going to shoot on again is iPhone. I mean, what is going on right now?
I think we're kind of seeing the, Gutenberg printing press all over again. And especially in an era of $100 million superhero movies one after another. We suddenly have an avenue towards unique, compelling, underserved storylines, which I think the marketplace is starved for. I know was blown away by Tangerine and gave me a glimpse into a world that I didn't really have a good grasp of, and I came out of it a better person for it. And I think if the tools that Chris and Terry are making and that Filmic is making lead to more people being able to tell unique, original storylines like that, ultimately, to steal a line from Silicon Valley, we're going to make the world a better place, and that's exciting.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, when we started LumaFusion, we really focused initially towards mobile journalists. And those are definitely people who were right on the front line of being able to just use their phone to both shoot with Filmic, edit with our app, and upload directly for broadcast and for the website. And they saw the new advantage in being able to quickly build a story right in the field and still have everything they needed to make the story look right and to customize it for their needs. And now we're seeing that starting to move into more independent films, and we hope to, have more editing of feature films on LumaFusion as well.
Now, we've talked about Filmic Pro on this show when we had Tangerine on, and I'm familiar with that app, and I'm learning more and more about Luma Touch since we started communicating, and I learned of your interest in being on the show. But let's just take a moment and inform our audience what Luma Touch is. We'll do the same for Filmic Pro, but just to get people up to speed. So what is Luma Touch?
Right. So Luma Touch is our company, and we make our main flagship product is called LumaFusion. And it is a professional video editing app for iPhone and iPad. And we, my partner Terry Morgan and I come from a background. She was an editor for over 30 years, and I've been doing video effects and video editing software for 30 years. And we worked together at Avid and did Avid Studio for iPad and then Pinnacle Studio for iPad. And LumaFusion is the culmination of everything we wanted to do in a mobile video editor. It gives you, multiple tracks of 4K video, additional multiple tracks of audio, unlimited layers of effects, an editing paradigm that's similar to Final Cut Pro, so that you feel comfortable with how you're working, and yet it's still more fun and more fluid and faster and easier to use than sitting down to the desktop, so you can do real editing in the field.
And it's for phone and iPad. Do you find that people are using this app to do full, large-scale edits, or is it just more for quick things? I mean, I'm thinking the screen real estate of a phone is probably tough to work with for post-production. An iPad, maybe not so much because it's a little bit bigger, especially the iPad Pros. But who is LumaFusion for?
Right. So, using it on the phone, I think we find that, more users use it for, shorter-based edits. Like I said, mobile journalism is a big area where if they're doing a 2 or 3 minute piece, it's actually very usable for that, and they use it quite well. I personally like the real estate of the iPad, where you can really work and have room to do what you want. But we actually had a full-length independent feature film that was shot and edited on the iPhone, released in India. And then, and we've had a couple of other full-length feature films, but those are usually been edited on the iPad, since that certainly does give you a little more room to work.
I mean, obviously, there's a million options for post-production. Premiere, Final Cut, people are editing in Resolve. I think Sony Vegas is still out there, certainly Avid. What is it about editing on an iPad and iPhone that you think is compelling, different, or even perhaps better?
Right. The first time you do it, you see the difference almost instantly because it feels different. The fact that you can sit back and think about your story as you're touching the screen and feeling that touch of moving your clips around with your finger has a completely different feel than using a mouse sitting forward on a desktop. And, we found a lot of users, some of the users we highlight on our website, they have been desktop users for years, and they find it more fluid and more fun to edit, on the iPad. And it changes the dynamic for them and takes them back to the story rather than the intricacies of editing.
And I mean, just the mobile aspect of it, obviously. I mean, if you can do a full real edit on your iPad, it does change things. I mean, editing on a laptop, on a plane, whatever, that little bit of extra space it takes and the bother to take an iPad with you, laptop with you, I mean, it does kind of complicate things. And I can see the appeal from just a mobile standpoint, especially if you're doing something that's really quick and dirty.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, for smaller edits, it's obviously perfect, but even for more complex edits, and we've worked really hard to integrate with, a wide variety of tools to make that easier. For example, obviously we work well with Filmic, but we also work well with drive manufacturers like Narbox and Western Digital so that you can quickly and easily get all of your media from all your sources, whether you're using drones or, other cameras, get it all in and use it quickly without having to import, without having to think about it, with just being able to browse your media on that drive and then quickly start editing with it. And that makes a big difference in your workflow.
iMovie on the phone is already there, so a lot of people, I think, would gravitate towards that first to get to the idea of editing on their phone. But is this kind of the next evolution of that? Is this the more professional version of iMovie on the phone?
Exactly. When you start with iMovie, and iMovie is a great tool, it's really easy and good to get started on an edit, but very quickly you find the limitations in not being able to get the edit that you want, not being able to have it look the way you want, not being able to cut exactly frame by frame the way you want. And that's where Luma Fusion comes in. First of all, the multiple tracks that make a big difference, the multiple layers of effects that are all fully keyframeable and controllable, and titles that you can completely design from the ground up and save your own templates. One of the things that I really like about our app, it's the best compliment of our app, is that I often can't tell when an edit has been done on Luma Fusion, where with iMovie, you can almost always tell one of their templates have been used.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I mean, I'm a Final Cut Pro 10 user, as everybody in this audience knows. They're probably annoyed with me talking about it constantly, but it is very much my NLE of choice. And this, in appearance, kind of has that same sort of feel to it, and it looks very Apple. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about the design that feels and looks very Apple. And for $20, it seems like it's at least worth a try to see if this mobile editing workflow is good for you guys.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, it's less than the cost of a meal, and you get a full professional video editing app that that we've been updating for over a year and a half now. And you'll see from the reviews on the app that people are very happy with what we've been doing. Our support's very good, and we listen to our customers. And so you can really get professional editing at a low cost, and it's fun to do again. It really makes editing fun.
So you guys handle the editing side of this mobile video production workflow, but let's talk about the shooting side with Filmic Pro. Neill, why did you even create this app in the first place? Because Apple has their own cameras. Obviously, they have their own software. You can shoot video just using your iPhone without any additional app. So why Filmic Pro?
I think the original reason was to offer 24 frames a second, which any filmmaker has an interest in bringing to their audience versus shooting in 30 frames a second. So this is back in 2010 at the dividing line between the 3S and the 4. And the 4 was the first iPhone that shot 720p HD. And it had startlingly good results if you dealt with the fact that it didn't have image stabilization. And so the original concept for the app was initially a B-roll camera where you could take a cutaway or an insert or an establishing shot that you might see on the way home from set, upload it to Dropbox. The editor would pull it down and put it in a timeline, and nobody would be the wiser. But ruminating on that concept for just a little bit made me realize that it was soon going to do away with the middle tier, I guess, of the video camera market, because you have the convenience, of course, of having your phone with you at all times, where back in the day, if people can remember a decade ago, there were innumerable instances of, oh man, I wish I had my camera with me so I could shoot this. So from there, it quickly turned into, well, what would you want in a professional camera? And ultimately, you kind of want it all. So we tried to mimic the functionality that you would find on the $10,000 to $50,000 Red camera. I guess that was kind of the inspiration back then, and put it into, a couple dollar iPhone application. And because we were an early mover in that space, we got a lot of interesting, compelling users who are trained broadcast professionals or filmmakers, and they've given us a raft of suggestions over the years that has helped make it a better product. But I want to touch on something that Chris said that I think was key in our pursuit of this process and this product, and that is just simply more fun. There's something so immediate and tactile about interacting with your phone that is different than using a traditional ENG camera, or in Luma's case, is different than using a desktop NLE. And I kind of just call it the GUI factor, getting your fingers in there, having a large display that's close to you, all works in a very immediate and satisfying way. And an anecdote that I always share is prior to Filmic Pro, I had a Canon 5D Mark II, which is beautiful camera, and the successive iterations are great. Incredible low light performance, Canon L glass, all of that sort of stuff. But it's clunky and unwieldy to shoot video, and I literally have never picked it up to shoot video since the first release of Filmic Pro back in 2011.
Wow.
Should have sold on eBay years ago, and it's just collecting dust as a relic to kind of the change from, I think, traditional methodologies to mobile methodologies. And I think a lot of people are realizing that it's more immediate and more fun and capable of delivering indistinguishable results from higher quality, more established solutions.
It really is fun. It's like, for me, I like kind of limiting my tool set in a way. Like I like the challenge of being able to use what I already have, like, to its absolute best and most capable, or to maximize its capabilities, is what I'm trying to say. And I feel like there's a lot of times where I'm looking at, am I going to take my camera out or am I going to take my phone? And I just always go with the phone, because I feel like it's this kind of untapped resource where I can always figure out new ways to expand it and make it better from a filming perspective. I mean, I'm much more familiar with Filmic Pro than I am Luma Touch, so I can speak more to Filmic Pro as far as using it. But it's pretty incredible the types of images that you can get out of that. And it's no wonder to me that this is being used for feature films.
Yeah, it's really fun that you mentioned something, using a tool to its best capabilities, and it's one of the funnest things I'm seeing now on YouTube are tutorials from users who have found ways to use the app that I didn't think of, to get new effects that I thought, oh, we're going to add that in a year or two, and they're doing it now by working with the tool that they already have, and that's sort of one of the fun things with a tool like this. It's a little earlier on. We don't have the years of effects and features that have been added on to other tools, but we have a good foundation to build something new and fun.
When Tangerine was being filmed and they decided they are going to shoot with an iPhone using Filmic Pro, did they approach you guys first? Did you work with them on that?
No. The story goes that Sean sent me an email the day after it debuted at Sundance, and they played it to a packed house. Nobody had any idea that it was shot on an iPhone. And after the credits got done rolling, they did a filmmaker Q&A. I think Sean and probably Chris Bergach, his production partner, got up and spoke to the audience, let everybody know it was shot on an iPhone with Filmic Pro, and they were flabbergasted. And so he reached out and said, probably should have reached out to you guys before, but we've been racing to try to get this done and just haven't had time. And so that began a very fun and fruitful relationship between Filmic and Sean. But I think there's one thing that I would like to add to that topic, and that is that initially Sean shot Tangerine on an iPhone for budget considerations, was trying to make a different film and raise high 6, low 7 figures for the budget. Couldn't do it. The Duplass brothers came along and said that, we'll give you $50,000 if you can think of a story that you'd like to make and could make for that amount of money. And that started the genesis of the Tangerine storyline. But In making that film, Sean discovered that the iPhone or mobile isn't just a cost-effective substitute for trying to replicate the experience that you could get on a more expensive piece of gear. It opens up new avenues of creativity that the traditional cameras don't necessarily lend themselves to, whether it's camera placement, whether it's intimacy with inexperienced or untrained actors, the level of comfort that they have with the camera, or whether it's going into places that would be sensitive to shoot and you draw attention to yourself with traditional gear. And with iPhones, you can just blend into the scenery. And so subsequently, in the times that Sean's used Filmic Pro and mobile, it's been a creative choice and not a budgetary one. And I think you're certainly seeing that with Steven Soderbergh as well, who obviously, can shoot on any camera in the world that he wants to, but there's something in the immediacy and the creativity that mobile lends itself that both filmmakers find incredibly inspiring.
Let's talk about Steven Soderbergh's film that he shot on iPhone, Unsane. Was that something that you were brought into at the beginning? I know a lot of camera manufacturers, when filmmakers have decided they're going to choose a camera, they work with the filmmakers in some ways to figure out, maybe different modifications they're going to make, some LUT sets. Sometimes they work with lens makers to try to make sure they have a look that's custom to their film. Was there any sort of dialogue with them leading up to shooting that film?
Nope. And actually, we had a dialogue with them afterwards. Prior to the distribution of Unsane, I think right around the time it was playing at Berlinale, but they were in production of their next iPhone Filmic Pro feature, which is going to be called High Flying Bird, apparently. And so on the second production, they had some questions, but they referenced Unsane and said they just started using it, had absolutely no problems, no issues, and just kept shooting and had a totally satisfactory experience. We would actually welcome the sort of...
Nobody wants to let you know until it's already shot. Why?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we think that there are actually some very compelling and unique feature sets that we're going to bring to market over the next 6 to 12 months. That if Mr. Soderbergh were in position to make his next iPhone feature, we'd love to talk to him about that prior to them actually beginning principal photography. So note to any of your listeners, if you're getting ready to undertake a feature film and considering shooting it on mobile with Filmic Pro, just drop us a line at info@filmicpro.com, and we'll be happy to consult with you and give you any logistical support before, during, and after the production.
Yeah, I think that's cool. And certainly people in our audience here would be doing that. We have filmmakers from all different levels. So, and certainly, even if you're at the top of your game, people are still using iPhones and Filmic Pro to do this, which is pretty cool. So let's take a minute and talk about Hedge. First of all, what is Hedge? Well, simple. It's a backup software for filmmakers. That's it. But how important is that? Making sure that your media is backed up correctly is essential. And you don't want to just be dragging files willy-nilly all over your Finder. You want an application that gives you the peace of mind, gives you the speed. These are the things you need when you are making your media backups. That's what I need, and that's why I use it. So here are some of the great things about Hedge. First of all, you can import multiple sources and send it to multiple destinations at the same time. So think about this. This is what we're saying here. You can take your media cards from your camera operators, your audio people, put them into Hedge, and send them out to however many destinations you want. So what I do is I hook up 2 hard drives. So I make sure I have 2 backups of everything before the end of the day. That's really important to me. So you can be your own little DIT, which is what I'm often doing. And then if you get the Hedge Connect app for your phone, you'll know when the transfer is done. So, like for me, I'll set my Hedge, I'll go to lunch. When the transfer is done, I get a notification on my app and all is good in the world. They're constantly updating the app, which is great. One of the newer updates allow automatic duplicate detection, which is a great feature and super important. And you can get a free trial. You can also do project licensing, or you can do the full version. And if you go to hedge.video/Go Creative Show, you get a 20% off discount of the full price. So what is there to lose? Check out hedge.video/Go Creative Show. Try it out. Let me know what you think. People have been coming back to me a lot and telling me that they've had great experiences with Hedge. And I'm not surprised because I do every time I open the app. So check them out. Hedge.video/Go Creative Show. I want to talk about the future of filmmaking, just almost beyond the idea of Filmic Pro and Luma Touch. Keep saying Luma Touch, but it's Luma Fusion. Where do you see this industry going now that there's a portfolio of films that have been made on iPhone? Clearly, it can be done. It can be done well. Do you feel like this will truly move filmmaking into this mobile production space?
Well, personally, I think it's a new tool in any filmmaker's belt. I don't think it'll replace the existing tools, but will be a new tool that they can use for certain types of films. That gives it a different feel, that gives it a different capability, that they want to edit differently. I just think it's the next tool in the belt, and you can see that other companies are starting to come on board. Adobe's announced a few products that they're moving to mobile as well. So everybody's realizing that there's something there, and that there's something new and unique there, both in power, capability, but as Neill also said, the sort of immediacy and personal nature of being able to work, on a personal device to get the result you want.
Yeah, and I think I would just add that the audience or the creative talent pool of potential filmmakers is just going to grow exponentially, because now you see these mobile tools being taught in classrooms from secondary to post-secondary ed, and actually even creeping into elementary or primary education. And so you're going to have people that were excluded in years past because they couldn't afford to go to film school. They couldn't afford to rent a Panavision. Now making films at 8, 10, 13, 15 years of age. And the wonderful thing about making a story on mobile, or ultimately just making a story, is if you have talent and are a skilled storyteller, you're going to resonate with an audience and people can see it. And the people who are talented find that doors open up for them and lead to other possibilities. So now that avenue is open to anyone, regardless of their income level, background, education, prospects, I think is incredibly exciting.
Are there limitations to the iPhone and iPad that are making it so that you can't really have all of your plans for Luma Fusion come to fruition?
For the most part, that's not the case. Apple has done and I give Apple the credit here, because they've done an incredible job of optimizing the audiovisual foundation that they've created for iPhone and iPad that makes it possible for us to do what we want to do. Now, there are some things we can't do. For example, you can't use ProRes media, on the iPad. So your media either has to be, H.264 or H.265. So that's one limitation. And we're working on some ways to provide some creative workflows to work around that. So that's probably the biggest one, is just the media handling capabilities do have some limits on the iPhone and iPad. But beyond that, there's almost nothing else it can't do. We're already working, Apple's provided some neat new capabilities with their Vision APIs for optical flow effects that we're going to be, bringing into the app over the next year. So I see that we're certainly catching up with what, Final Cut or Adobe Premiere has, but we're starting with a newer foundation that's lighter weight, more nimble, and I think we'll catch up with it feature-wise and really, give everybody everything they want to do. And again, we're listening to our users to do that piece by piece, bringing all those features out.
And Neill, what about you? What are your limitations with using the phone as basically your medium?
sensor size, processor speed, and thermal buildup. So especially with version 6 of Filmic Pro, which offered a variety of gamma curves, we're definitely pushing the limits of what even the iPhone 10 can deliver performance-wise. So if you happen to be shooting in ambient temperatures of over 80 degrees and using a flat or log gamma curve, you're going to notice your device heating up as you get into production. If you're planning on doing a full 10 or 12, 14-hour day of production, you're probably actually going to need a handful of devices to rotate through. So there are definitely some real physical limitations to what the device can support. And then, we notice it in our support queue because there are always trade-offs. If you want to shoot with a gamma curve, then you can't shoot, say, at 120 frames a second. Just the same way you can't shoot at 120 frames per second if you want to shoot in 4K. So there are trade-offs that you wouldn't necessarily have to make if you were dropping, $30,000 on a camera. But a rule of thumb, or something that I'm fond of telling people, is what's the ceiling now is soon going to be the floor. So in 2 or 3 years, the iPhone 10 will be about the slowest device going, and the iPhone 14 will be delivering performance that, we can't even dream of on the mobile platform today. Will it be enough to get us into a 422 color space or ProRes? I don't know. At this point, I think it's wishful thinking, and I would like to see Apple maybe move away from slimness as the driving attractive factor of either new MacBook Pros. This has been a issue, I guess, in the last 2 days about how it throttles the i9 performance. And in the same way, I often say that to any mobile filmmaker, the thinness of the new devices compared to, say, a 5 or 5S means nothing. And in fact, the mobile filmmaker would rather have a larger battery, a larger processor, and a larger sensor, and a marginally thicker iPhone. So hopefully there's an iPhone Pro model on the horizon in the next 2 or 3 years that addresses some of those limitations right now on the hardware side.
Well, you may have at least started to answer my next question. So I'll start with you while we're here. What are you hoping for? What are you looking for in the next crop of smartphones that would be perfect for mobile filmmaking?
I'd say ProRes RAW, but I would be informed by our engineering team that that's probably a bridge a little bit too far. Outside of that, I think the next option for maybe some dramatic improvement is the optics. And you hear speculation about everything from, I guess, a 3-lens camera on the iOS side to up to a 5-lens camera on the Android side. And most interestingly, what would be of maximum benefit to us would actually be if the 3-lens models are dual wides and 1 telephoto. So instead of giving you a third focal length, that we could have matching focal lengths, so we could do a lot of stuff around either HDR or depth maps to facilitate some of the bokeh shallow depth of field effects that, of course, you can get with any great optical lens on a traditional camera mount. So that's what we're hoping for, because as a narrative tool, that's absolutely crucial to be able to use your depth of field to control your audience's eye within the frame and point them in the direction of what you want them to read in the story.
Chris, what about you? What are you hoping for in the next crop of phones and iPads, tablets?
For us, it's more about the software and what Apple does, in that regard. And I'm actually really happy with what Apple's focus in iOS 12 of working on performance, because we have seen the performance degrade, from one iOS version to another slightly, because we, like Filmic, we're heavily using the processor capabilities of the device, and the more optimization they provide, the better our app works. And then we also just want to see more improvements in the AV Foundation that, will take us to those next features that we want to provide and make it easier for us to do that. From a hardware standpoint, it's not as much of a concern on our standpoint, though I would, definitely echo, Neill's comments about the depth of field, because we'd really like to have that data available off of the main camera to be able to do some really nice editing techniques, and pulling focus and things like that in post-production. And I think that would be fantastic.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Little Arrow by Chill Study. PremiumBeat.com is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. Check out their website and get access to a collection of thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $49 each. $49! And it's not just the single track. You get cut downs, a 30, a 10, a 15 sometimes, all over the map. You also get loop sets. So you have all the tools at your disposal to customize the track to fit your project perfectly. But all of that aside, none of that even makes a difference if there isn't great selection of really high quality songs. And that's what you're going to find. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. And that's what you'll find at PremiumBeat.com. So check it out, PremiumBeat.com. And lastly, I want to talk about Shutterstock.com. So everybody knows that Shutterstock.com is where you go for royalty-free video clips and photos and music and all sorts of stuff. But what you may not know is that they have over 8 million royalty-free video clips, many of which are in 4K. This week alone, they have over 75,000 clips that were added. 75,000 this week. So it's absolutely crazy how many clips they have. The pricing is simple, so it's really easy to budget for your clients, and you can save hundreds of dollars if you take advantage of their video packs. So you get all of that over at shutterstock.com/video. But there's one kind of interesting way that I use Shutterstock. I go there sometimes just for inspiration, just to kind of clear the cobwebs a little bit. If I'm in the middle of a tough edit or just looked at a project too long and I just need something different to look at, I've gone to Shutterstock.com, and it's sort of gotten me over the hump on a few editing projects. I also use it quite a bit for creating director's treatments. So when I'm bidding against other companies or just presenting my ideas to a client, I always want to give them visual examples that represent what I'm talking about. And certainly you can go to films and take some still shots, and I do that. But a lot of times I'll go to Shutterstock.com and I'll put in the search bar the type of shot that I'm looking for, and more often than not, I am faced with exactly what I'm looking for and tons of options, which is huge. So that's kind of a unique way to use Shutterstock.com. I've used that for videos, and I've also used that for photography. So between that and the stock footage that I'm buying for my own projects, I'm there quite a bit. But it's cool because there's always something different going on there, and they do a great job of organizing and curating and making the searching process fun and interesting and engaging. So it's all there at shutterstock.com/video. Check it out for yourself. I know you're going to love it. Now, there is so much more to talk about with Neill and Chris, and it's coming up right now. I want to talk about workflow, specifically with combining your two applications together. I guess it only makes sense to start with Filmic Pro, since that's where you'd be acquiring your footage. But I definitely want to figure out what are the best practices. How are people using these two apps together to be mobile filmmakers?
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, I'll take the lead a little bit, and I think it's a great advantage to the consumer that Luma and Filmic are actually great friends and partners as companies and have a pretty well-established open dialogue, and are always talking about ways to improve the workflow. So an initial I guess, integration between the two companies, saw us sharing a D-log curve for our flat log gamma footage so that you can D-log it in Luma Fusion, because we know that that is the preferred destination for mobile editing for people who use Filmic.
Yeah.
And we have some ongoing discussions around things like filters and LUTs that I think you'll see over the next year or two. So you might be able to pre-visualize what you want your intended effect to be, and then actually create it and realize it in Luma without basically, I don't want to call it destructive if you bake in a look before it hits the sensor, but I mean, ultimately that's what it is, because it would take radical steps to undo it, and that would degrade the image. So if you can just preview it on Filmic and then ultimately decide at the next step of the process that is indeed the look that you want, and that you could cook it in Luma Fusion, we think that would be fantastic. And then maybe to set Chris up for the next step of the conversation, I think that Luma supports a variety of XML exports. So depending on where you want to go, if there are any limitations on mobile for, let's say, I don't know, the effects that you might want to create, if you need to go to a desktop, you can. So I don't think that there are actually any real limitations at all.
So right now you're shooting. So let's just say we're shooting in Filmic. It's being recorded onto your phones, onto your device. So you're limited at least by the size of the drive on your device.
Which is negligible, because now the devices are 256 gigs. So actually, to reference back to Soderbergh, he's on record as saying they never even filled up a device once in an entire day of shooting. So I think if it's going to work for him, it's going to work for just about anyone else in the audience.
So people are shooting, it's getting on their devices, and then they can just quickly switch over to Luma Fusion, open things up, and use Luma Fusion as you would any editing device to be able to log things and put things in order. And
Exactly.
talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, one of the nice things is, if you, depending on, the type of media that you're or the type of either the frame rate or the quality that you're recording, you can select in Filmic to, have it saved directly to the camera roll, and that'll be available instantly in Luma Fusion. But there are some types of media that aren't supported by the Photos app, but are supported between both Filmic Pro and Luma Fusion. And in those cases, you can record within Filmic Pro, select those media files, and simply say share to Luma Fusion. And in that case, it'll appear in an imported from Filmic, folder ready to use. And then once you have it in Luma Fusion, you can trim it, you can add notes to your clips, you can, obviously then create a full edit, and then immediately export it to either the camera roll or to anywhere else you want to go to any cloud storage, to Vimeo, to YouTube. Or as Neill mentioned, one of the things we'll be coming out with relatively soon is a feature allowing you to export the media and XML to be able to continue editing on the desktop in those cases where you do need a little more of the capabilities that are, that are only available on the desktop case. So you can have a complete workflow that you can start in a mobile space and finish on the desktop if you need to, or finish while completely on mobile if you're able to.
Now, if you're shooting something and you're not using a phone as your camera, using something else, how are people getting that footage into the iPad in order to use Luma Fusion?
Right. So one of the things, there's a lot of ways to do it. You can use the camera connection kit that Apple sells. That has some limitations, and these days I think there's some better options. Two of the ones that we work very closely with are Narbox, which is a ruggedized media hard drive from a company called Narbox, a really neat little device. And we also work very closely with Western Digital with their My Passport Wireless Pro and wireless SSD drives. The nice thing about both these drives is that they have SD card slots in them. And so you simply stick in your SD card, it'll back up your media to the drive. So you have the benefit of both having a backup, but the bigger benefit is that media is then immediately browsable within Luma Fusion. You'll see it in our library without having to download it to your iPad or iPhone. You can trim it, you can preview it, And then only when you actually drag a clip to the timeline will it import it onto the actual device and use space on your device. So it's a really great way to manage large amounts of media from drones and other cameras, GoPros, things like that.
Is someone able to send maybe proxies to Luma Fusion and then reconnect later on with an XML export or something on Premiere or Final Cut?
That's actually something, interestingly enough, that we're working on. We have another app that we're working on for Mac called Luma Connect that would allow you to drag any type of media, including ProRes, RAW, or whatever you're working with, into a bin. It will generate proxies and make them available to your iPhone or iPad, edit there, and then it can either render it itself using the originals or export to XML with the original media. That's coming probably early next year is what we're shooting for on that.
Like, that sounds amazing to me because I know what's going to happen. If I start using Luma Fusion, I'm going to love it, and then I'm going to want to like use it more and more. But I think naturally what it's going to be is almost like an assembly for me. I'll kind of like get string outs together. I'll kind of get rough edits together. I think I probably, at least at the beginning, will want to finish somewhere else, but I would also want to be editing with stuff that I didn't necessarily shoot on my phone, and figuring out ways to get footage in and out of it without maxing out the drive, I think could be really, really powerful.
Right. Though, with a lot of the media these days, either recorded H.264 or H.265, you can get a lot of 4K media, as Neill said, on a 256 gigabyte device, and do a full length feature film on your iPad. But it is for those other types of media that you might have, from really high end cameras or whatever that might be ProRes or whatever, that we are working towards, making sure we have a solution for that as well.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back real quick to Filmic Pro and talk about lenses. When we were talking to the Tangerine guys, they were mentioning that they were adding some additional lenses to it to help with some, field of views and things like that, and just different looks. Talk to me about the way that you interact with other lenses. Do you have partnerships with these companies, or can you make a recommendation on what you think is a good pairing?
Oh, sure. Well, the Tangerine guys use the Moondog Labs anamorphic adapter, which we had a partnership with Moondog, I guess, pre-launch. The deal with an anamorphic adapter is it basically bends the image to fit over the entire available video sensor, and then we do a de-squeeze operation that outputs the frame into the intended 2:4:0:1 widescreen aspect ratio. And the Moondog Labs people have a background from Eastman Kodak and Corning Glass. So, they absolutely know their stuff. And you get beautiful organic lens flares in the frame, which is part of the reason it was, to my mind, such a beautiful film. And I think that's primarily the only glass that they used on that production. There are a range of, additional lenses that are out on the marketplace that mimic, either wide, super wide, telephoto, usually a 2x, maybe a 5x. I know that there are some 10x telephotos for $29.99, but I actually don't know the optical quality of those, and then some fish eyes. So I think that those are interesting to give you certainly more avenues of creativity. Depending on the manufacturer, you could potentially get some vignetting in the corners, though I think some of the better glass is going to negate that. So ultimately, if you can visualize it, there's going to be a way to get it done.
On your website, there's a section called Gear with all sorts of stuff: cases, lenses, microphones, stabilizers, sliders, accessories. This really is like your toolkit for mobile filmmaking. I've been thinking about this a lot because I want to do more vlogging from behind the scenes of my productions. And I love this idea of like using a stabilizer, having the front-facing camera look towards you. You know what you're saying. You can see yourself. And just like upping my vlog game for BC Media Productions behind the scenes. Like, that's an application that I can really see using this stuff. And so I've been sort of looking about this. I've been browsing around, checking out your microphones and different things to figure out how to best set up my mobile kit. Obviously, people can go to filmicpro.com and check out the gear section, but do you have any recommendations that you just hear a lot of people combining with your app?
Oh, sure. I mean, there are definitely some standards, whether it's the Osmo 1 and 2 gimbal, Osmo Mobile 1, Osmo Mobile 2 by DJI, or G1 has a new Smooth 4. That's an interesting entry into the gimbal space.
Yeah.
I think that Moment has probably overtaken what was iPro Lens by Schneider Optics, or Zeiss Exo Lens used to have some optic solutions for mobile, but I think Moment now has the best ones on the marketplace. Microphones, Sennheiser, Shure, Rode are all going to bring a variety of high quality, high performing options to the marketplace. And I think that there are a range of upstart companies, MicMe, Instamic would be two that come to mind, that are trying to do innovative things in the audio space. Chris had already mentioned Western Digital and Narbox as great storage solutions for people who are going to be out in the field for a while, accruing a lot of data and wanting to share it maybe between an iPhone with Filmic Pro and an iPad running Luma Fusion. So those, I think, are some of the essentials, though I would caution your audience that it's very hard to use everything you want all at the same time. So you might want to use a gimbal, but then you put your phone in it and you realize that the lightning connector is blocked. So the external microphone that you wanted to use, you now can't use. Or you're going to want to put a lens on and then you realize that your weight or balance is off. I know that both Moondog and Moment have come up with counterweight solutions to overcome that. But that's sort of where the limitation is right now. There isn't a perfect one-size-fits-all accessory that lets you do everything you want. And the ones that come the closest, begin to push at the boundaries of whether it's even mobile at that point, because you have a big rig with all of these accessories plugged in your iPhone.
Yeah.
And then you look at your DSLR and it's actually potentially, not any different in size than, your fully outfitted mobile rig. So, I mean, on a personal level, I try to stick to the mobile credo as much as possible. Light, nimble, slip it in your pocket and go.
Yeah, I love that. And our last couple of minutes, I want to just get a sense of what is to come. And we'll start with Chris. What are the big features that you can say? I mean, obviously, I know some stuff is a surprise, but we'll keep it secret. Don't worry about it. Tell me what's to come for Luma Fusion.
All right, so for Luma Fusion, our next release actually, and I think we've already announced this, and it's coming next month, will include, a number of nice features, but will include the ability to browse story blocks, stock footage, and royalty-free audio. That'll be a subscription, if you want to actually, we'll have some free media in there, but it will have a subscription if you want access to the full library. But we'll, as we've always done with everything else, will be very inexpensive to have a very good quality library of stock footage directly available in the app. After that, in our next release, we're coming out with a Pro Pack that will include the XML export that I talked about. It'll include external monitor support. So you can plug in your iPhone or your iPad to a display or through Apple TV and actually be able to use it as a preview monitor and edit while you're previewing on a full screen and see exactly what it's going to look like going out. That's going to be really fun. Beyond
That's
that,
cool.
Yeah. Beyond that, we are, we're looking at things like video stabilization. But most importantly, we're working at just continuing to refine the editing capabilities of the app itself to make sure that, we cover all the cases. We have, every day we get people saying, hey, this is a fantastic app. Can you add this feature? And so, we keep a list of all those requests and we know what the top ones are. Things like right now, one of the limitations we have is, you can't select multiple clips in the timeline. You can in the library, but if you want to move multiple clips in the timeline, unless they're linked, it's a little hard. So that's one of the ones we'll be working on for the next release. And we'll just continue to refine the user interface, adding more tracks, things like that to give you more capabilities, to just continue to make it the best solution out there and make it a solution that really will replace the desktop in the long run.
And Neill, you're up. What is on the way?
Okay. I will say that we're going to have 2 new products out before the end of the year that should extend our product suite. On the Filmic Pro side, actually, I think you tipped off what our show-stopping feature in version 7 will actually be, and that's going to be around image manipulation. Both being able to take advantage of all of the gamma curves that we offer, but how you can modify your image and create a custom look, and how, and this is the part that you specifically envisioned, how you could potentially preview that without necessarily committing to it. And that's where I think I also tipped off that we had been chatting with Luma about how to potentially do that so we could offer our users a non-destructive solution that would let them pre-visualize a custom look and then finish it off later. And then I think the last thing that I would leave with is that we're waiting to see what the new batch of smartphones and next generation iPhones are going to offer. And if they do offer the 3-lens array with 2 wides, then we're going to have a host of interesting new functionality by being able to do 2 different things with the same image. So whether that's expanded dynamic range would certainly be one, and then a host of shallow depth of field optical effects. So we have our fingers crossed about that.
Well, this is really exciting. Both of these applications are fantastic, and you guys should definitely check them out. Where can people go to learn more about these apps? We'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah. For our app, simply go to lumatouch.com. That's LUMATOUCH.com. And you'll see some of our customer highlight stories there. And there'll be a link to download it from the App Store. You can also just search for it in the App Store. Type in Luma and you'll see it pretty quickly.
And Neill.
Yeah, pretty much the same, filmicpro.com or Filmic in the App Store. And the other thing I would recommend is that people go to Vimeo and YouTube and type in Filmic Pro, and then you'll get a really great idea of what the creative community is able to create with Filmic.
Yeah, you guys, you both have a real thriving creative market there that is that's using your stuff and creating cool stuff. So hopefully our audience is part of that, and if they're not, they will now be. So thank you guys so much for being on the show, and we'll have to have you back.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it.
There you go. Grab your phone, get out there and shoot a film. I mean, seriously, what is stopping you? Tangerine was done on an iPhone, right? And it was huge, absolutely huge. So there's nothing stopping you. Get these apps, get out there, and go make a film. I want to thank Chris Demiris and Neill Barham for coming on and talking about their apps and the future of filmmaking. I also want to thank Matt Russell for mixing, mastering, and making the show sound good. He's over there at gainstructure.com, gainstructure.com, and on Twitter at gainstructure. You can hire him too. You certainly can. I do all the time. He does all the mixing and mastering for my production work at BC Media Productions as well. And he's a nice fella, so hire him. I want to thank our sponsors, Hedge.video, Rule Boston Camera, Newsshooter.com, Shutterstock, and Premium Beat. Without these people, the show wouldn't exist. Then that'd be super boring. So support those that support us, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.